Hi, I'm Marty Cohn, and this is BCTV's Meet the Candidates 2020, sponsored in part by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. This series affords you an opportunity to hear from folks running for elected office. Today, our guest is Christopher Helali, the Communist Party candidate for U.S. Representative for Vermont's at-large congressional district. Welcome, Mr. Helali.
Thank you very much, and thank you very
All
much for hosting me.
Great, great. Okay, good. Had a little technical difficulty there, but we're working. All right. So let's dive right in. Why are you seeking this office?
I'm seeking this office for the primary reason, which is to go against the duopoly, the two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, which for me and for our party are the parties of capitalism and war. And so right now, the working class in this country, both workers and farmers, underemployed, unemployed, they face a tremendous catastrophe looming. And that is the failure of this economy, the failure of this government to provide for them to meet their basic demands and their basic needs. And so therefore, the Communist Party, the Party of Communist USA, which I belong to, is saying that we need a new alternative. And that alternative is to fight for socialism and to fight for taking care of the basic needs of all people. And that is workers, farmers, those that are least among us. And so that's why I'm vying for that position. Most people in Congress are millionaires, if not billionaires. And I think that it's unnecessary now. We need to have a Congress that represents the working class, that represents farming communities, that represents the average person on the street. Be they of any color, any gender, it doesn't matter, any religion. What needs to happen is a government that serves the people, not that serves the corporate masters and serves the military industrial complex and all of these actors looming in the shadows. And so that's why I'm vying for this position.
All right. Well, and I think you've probably already answered my question, but I'm going to ask it anyway in terms of what sets you apart from the other candidates seeking this office.
Well, the first thing that sets me apart is I'm not a millionaire. I make just a small, measly salary. I work as a farmer and I'm a graduate student. And what sets me apart is that I have a tremendous amount of international experience. I studied in China for 2 years, where I received my master's degree. I've studied in Greece, where I received another master's degree. I'm at Dartmouth now. I'm an internationalist. I'm a first-generation American. And so the primary thing is that I have an international vision, that the United States cannot do everything on its own, that there has to be an international solution to all of the problems that are facing humanity as a whole. Be they climate change, be they the COVID-19 pandemic that we're living through right now. No country can do it alone. Everybody has to come together. There has to be international cooperation. There has to be respect for each other's sovereignty and self-determination. And so the primary thing that sets me apart is that I have a real strong international focus. That is, we shouldn't be warmongering with other countries. We shouldn't be going and doing regime change wars and overthrowing governments that we don't agree with. We should sit down at the same table and say, we have these differences. Where can we meet to solve some of the biggest problems at our time? How can we achieve peace together? How can we fight for peace together? Right now, as you well know, there's a lot of ramping up of tensions between both Russia and now China. And there's a lot of anti-China hysteria, anti-Russia hysteria. And I think that we need to de-escalate. We need to go to the table because both countries, both Russia and China, seek peace. They have always extended the olive branch. They are not in any way aggressive towards us. We have surrounded their countries with military bases. So the primary task that I have is, as someone who has served in the armed forces, I was an officer in the US Army, and I also fought against ISIS in Syria. Another thing that differentiates me from some of the other candidates is that I've seen war firsthand. And what I can tell you is that I wish it upon nobody. And I don't think anybody wants to send their children off to war. And nobody really wants to go and pick up the rifle, put on the tin hat, and go fight in somebody else's land. For what? For who? Who's benefiting from that? My primary thing and the primary task of all communists is to fight for peace. We've always fought for peace. We served alongside the US and the British to fight against Nazism. It was the Soviet Red Army that gave 20 million lives to fight against Nazism and fascism. And I think that right now what differentiates me and what is the critical task right now is to fight for a peaceful future, to fight for a future that is ecologically sustainable, to fight for a future where all human needs are met, and to fight for a future where people can live in peace and harmony with one another around the world.
Right. Well, so if if you're elected, what would be your top two priorities?
The first priority would be the defense budget and really cutting back, ending the wars. Number one, ending the wars. Dissolving NATO. The Warsaw Pact, as you know, no longer exists. It ended with the dissolution of the Soviet Union. There's no real need for NATO. NATO was the antithesis to the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact doesn't exist anymore. Russia is a capitalist country. I don't understand what the problem is. Everybody can get together. They're doing business. Everybody's doing business. NATO serves the interests of the military industrial complex. Regime change in Libya. Libya before Gaddafi. Okay, you might not agree with Gaddafi, but today in Libya, it's a failed state. Slavery. It's horrible. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these places, Yemen, all these catastrophes that we've been involved with, the constant warmongering and doing military exercises at another country's border. Let me ask you a question. If Russia did military exercises in Mexico, do you think Americans would be upset? Of course. Americans were petrified when the Soviet Union put medium-range ballistic missiles into Cuba, caused the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. We almost ended in nuclear war. But somehow the United States can put bombers and military aircraft on the borders of Russia and the borders of China. These countries also have, their own pride, their own history, much longer than our history. They were around before the US was ever even a concept. So I think that it's really important for us. The first task is to end the wars, get all US military troops out of foreign bases, begin to de-escalate globally, work towards denuclearization, say we want to go to zero. Nobody wants nuclear weapons. Why do we have these weapons? And Russia has already said we're willing to go and negotiate that. It's the United States and some of its allies like Israel who have constantly said we're not going to give them up. The thing is now we have to give them up. That's it. Let's move back. The second priority is to provide for working class people. Why do these corporations get bails out? Why do big agribusinesses get subsidies? It's time for working class Americans, working class farmers to be able to get the share of what they deserve. And that for me is the free healthcare, free education. All these things are so critical. People here are suffering. Vermonters are suffering. Farms are shutting down. Dairy farms are moving to goats. Everything's changing because the government has not provided a space and the chutzpah, as they say, to really get out there and to say, okay, enough with these corporations. Let's give money to the people. Let's serve the people. Everybody got a $1,200 check. Imagine what the government could do if they stopped spending money on the military and they stopped giving tax subsidies to all these big corporations and big financial institutions and said, let's help the working class. Because a stronger community, a stronger society, people that have their basic needs met, they're not going to riot. They're not going to loot. They're not going to go out there and break windows and burn down cities. But if you keep the people impoverished, if you keep the masses without work, underemployed, no ability, I can't go to the hospital, I have all these bills, I can't go to school without taking out tremendous loans, of course there's going to be that stuff. It's history. That's what happens. French Revolution, American Revolution, all these Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, all these revolutions happen when people are saying, enough, I'm sick of it. I don't want somebody else taking everything and leaving me with crumbs. And so that's the priority, these two priorities, helping the working class, ending the wars. And I think that those two priorities are the most difficult to do in this current state of affairs in this country, because nobody wants to touch them. Nobody wants to deal with that. A little bit of crumbs here for the workers, and then, of course, more money for the military.
Okay, well, I'd like to turn to some issues here in Vermont. If you were elected, what would you do to ensure that more Vermont families with young children can find and afford childcare?
For me, and on our platform, childcare should be free. I don't understand why even people have to pay for childcare. What kind of society, what kind of state What kind of government would say that somehow our fellow citizens, the people in this nation, should pay for childcare when those children grow up to be citizens of that country, citizens to wear the uniform, to fight, to defend it, to work for it, to struggle for it, to till its land? I think for me and for our party and those who think like us, whether they be in other parties or other even ideological spectrum, is open in this regard. Childcare should be free. I don't understand how it could be somehow a bizarre concept. So I will fight tooth and nail to have that be a policy, because that's patriotic. It's patriotic to say all children in this nation, sure, they should be taken care of. Why? That's the future. That's the future of this country. Wouldn't the founding fathers and mothers have thought the same thing? Say, of course, this is the fruit of this nation. Therefore, we should take care of them, put all of our investment in them, not like platitudes and saying, oh, we love the kids, leave no kid behind. No, open up in every community, open up free childcare institutions. And guess what? There are jobs, union jobs, good wages. People can work, people can and imagine the stress that will be lessened, the breath of fresh air that people can take to know kids are being taken care of. There's an opportunity for this kind of institution to exist, and people can work, people can have communities, people can have more freedom to do what they need to do. That's the goal. In the meantime, I will fight tooth and nail to get to that goal. Any step we can take to make childcare affordable, accessible, is what's necessary. I'm all for compromise, but this is beyond compromise now. We are in a situation that is catastrophic for the entire society, and we see the fissures in this society right now. We need to have radical policies. We need to have a radical action. And that for me is free childcare for all children. That's it. For high quality, we pay people decent wages, we take care of them, we take care of the kids, we provide state of the art. Why can we provide state of the art stuff for military equipment? F-35s flying around in Vermont. Why do we have the F-35 and we don't have childcare here for free? It doesn't make sense to me.
So let me ask you about the other end of the age. Recent reports indicate that seniors in Vermont face one of the highest rates of financial insecurity in the nation. How do you think we could make life for seniors more affordable?
I think this is something that affects me dearly, because I helped to take care of my grandfather at the end of his days. He passed away a few years ago in his 90s, and my partner's grandmother lives with us on the farm. She's 95. And so I look at these people and I say, you exist for us. Like, I always say it this way. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't exist if they didn't work hard and they didn't exist. Grandma here has made all of this possible. My relationship, my children, the land, the soil, all of it through their hard work. I always hear on the other side of the aisle, conservatives say family values. Family values. Well, isn't it a family value to provide the best for the elders? Isn't it a family value to take care of the most senior in our communities, the people who've worked the hardest, who've sweat, who've toiled on the land, in the factories, in jobs that they weren't given any credit for, to provide for the families and for the community and for the nation? Therefore, for me, first priority is, if we take care of seniors, if we have some mechanism to give them a decent wage even after they retire. And this, for me, how come pensions aren't universal? Pensions should be universal. Social Security should be much higher, in my opinion. Seniors should live with dignity. Nobody should feel like I have to pinch pennies for medication, for how am I going to buy groceries. Seniors are on food stamps in this state. That's unacceptable to me. In a country where we send hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars on wars in the Middle East, tens of thousands of miles away, seniors in our country, veterans who fought in World War II against the Nazis, against Japanese imperialism, in Korea, in Vietnam, now they are struggling. And you say, if the right really cares about, and even Democrats, if they really care about veterans, if they really care about the elderly, if they really care about those women who worked in factories, who worked on farms, who milked the cow at 4 a.m., well then provide for them, take care of them, allow them to live with dignity until the end. And so that means, for me, number one, increasing all benefits to the elderly, all benefits across the board. They should have Social Security for life, and that means higher than what they currently get. We should give more money to seniors, not less. We should provide for families to keep the seniors at home. You know, one of the biggest things that bothers me is that now we have institutions that are for profit, most of them, of course, in this society, that you send your elder family members off to, and they're not treated well. They'd be much better if families had the wherewithal and the means to have more money, to have more stability at home, they could keep their seniors with them, right? If they had more resources, they could keep that elderly grandmother or grandfather at home. And how much better would it be for their health, their emotional well-being, their satisfaction to be with the family still? Now, I'm not saying it can happen with every family. There should be institutions provided by the state to provide for those seniors that maybe don't have family, that maybe they're alone, and that can have a place to go. They can have a place that takes care of them, the highest quality and the highest care. But what's for me most important is that seniors should be taken care of. They should get more money. They should get more benefits. Healthcare should be free across the board. Anything that they need. Why? They've given everything to this nation. Think about it. If they've worked all those years, all of their labor, their sweat has gone to the land and to the nation. So I think that it's really important that we take care of the elder, and that means family values for me. Family values is taking care of the family from the beginning to the end. Not saying, oh, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and, oh, you didn't work hard enough in your life, so now you suffer. No, it's the nation will take care of everybody across the board from beginning to the end.
Hey, thank you. So here's a in a looking at a post-COVID world, post-COVID. What would be your vision for Vermont in a post-COVID world?
COVID-19 has affected Vermont tremendously. Think about how much Vermont relies on tourism, right? So a lot of the tourism has decreased. We don't know how many people are going to come for the foliage now. We don't know, what's going on in that regard. People have lost a lot of money. Businesses have shuttered in Vermont because of the pandemic. Farms have suffered, especially dairy farms, have suffered because there's no demand. People have sold off livestock. People have suffered in terms of the closure of markets, and farmers markets have been much less attended. And so you look at all these things and you say, what's the failure here? The failure is a state that steps up and says, you all will be protected across the board. Not a state that steps up and a federal government that steps up and says, oh, the airline industry, we bail them out. 50 billion here, a couple hundred billion to these corporations. No, a state that steps up and says, these small businesses, we're taking care of them. That's it. Mom and pop shops, that's it. Across the board, all your employees will be paid full wages. You will have full benefits across the board, and you'll make sort of whatever the income was up to then. You'll make it. That's it. We'll provide checks. We'll keep it going. Farms, you don't have anywhere to sell. No problem. We'll create a distribution method that in a crisis again that will come. Crises has come all the time, right? We had influenza before in the early 20th century. There'll be other pandemics. There'll be other catastrophes. We should have mechanisms in place where if the supply chain fails, if restaurants are shuttered, if schools no longer serve lunches, there should be a mechanism. There should be a state industry that goes out there and collects all this milk, all this cheese, whatever is left over, and distributes it to the people. We have all this waste going on. People dumping milk, people dumping produce. That's unacceptable in a society that has hunger. That's unacceptable in a society where people are malnourished, where people in inner cities live in food deserts. So what should happen? There should be state industry, state employees that go out there, go to each farm, collect it all, and redistribute it. Have centers, pop-up centers where people, they've already done some of that. They've had food banks and things like that. And we need to focus on that, strengthening that, the resiliency of Vermont for another crisis to come. And Vermont should focus on the fact that when this happens again, what we've learned from this crisis is that everyone across the board should be taken care of. The most vulnerable, the most weak, the least among us should be taken care of. That's it. And so if a crisis comes again, all the farms should be taken care of. Small and medium-sized farms, fully funded. All the workers should be taken care of. There should be nobody who struggles because of something out of their control. These things are natural. These things happen, whether it be a pandemic, an earthquake, a massive hurricane or storm. All these things should be the basic values of our society, which is that we should take care of one another, that everyone should live with dignity. And so for me, it's not something, from another planet that, oh my gosh, we should take care of each other and we should provide more funding for this kind of stuff. Of course. And if we don't have the funding, we should find it. And we should find it by cutting out other things that are not necessary, like F-35, like all this military stuff that we're doing. If there was more money in the pool for all these programs, each state would have succeeded tremendously. There's a reason why China has over 1 billion people and hasn't had the crisis that we've had. They've marshaled all the resources of the society. They've shut down cities. They've made sure that everything stopped. They provided for the people. And now they're in a much better situation than we are. And there's a reason why Cuba has done the same, or other countries that are not even as developed as we are, that we look down upon as being somehow, third world or global south. And how come we, the richest country in the world, can't do these things? We can't provide for our people. We can't provide in a crisis situation. That should be the priority. The priority is Vermont, post COVID-19, put together a panel and figure out all the things that need to happen if another crisis hits. These are the things that should happen. We should be able to provide for everybody. We should be able to make sure that everything functions still. And that doesn't mean that everything functions with everybody getting together. No, stay at home, stay safe, stop the spread. But what that means is we provide for the basic needs. People will not suffer. And I think that a lot of the reaction to all of the businesses shuttering was the fact that workers ended up suffering. They couldn't pay their rent. They couldn't pay they couldn't pay for anything that they really had, the bills, all that stuff. If you're thinking about your salary and then you're thinking about unemployment, there's a gap there. That gap is a real gap for people who are working class or people who are living paycheck to paycheck, which a lot of people are living. So I think, I was unemployed. I waited 16 weeks for my unemployment check to come from New Hampshire because I was working at Dartmouth before the pandemic. In 16 weeks, we suffered. We had to borrow money from family members. Nobody should live with that kind of stress. We have a young child here, another one on the way. Nobody should live with the stress of thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to take care of the family? What are we going to do? The state should instantly be there and say all the resources, marshal them. If we can marshal all the resources for war and sending hundreds of thousands of people out there, of course we can marshal them for the people of this country.
Thank you. All right. Last question for me is, what do you want voters to know about you?
I think the first thing to know is that they're having somebody who is working class, has never forgotten their roots. I grew up with an immigrant family. All my family members were in a union. And, my dad was a truck driver. Mom works for the federal government now in the labor department. She worked for the post office for many years. And you look at where I've come, and I've had such tremendous opportunities. I've been able to attend Ivy League school. I've been able to, serve in the military. And for me, the biggest thing is that I've never lost sight of the fact that I am from the working class. I am someone who loves to go out there and help pitch a hay bale, help milk a cow, help see what's going on out there, because we also have a farm. And I look and, the past few days we've been baling, right? And I look and I say, how many, my friend looked at me and said, how many Congress people or people running for Congress are doing that right now? And I thought to myself, not many. Not many are doing that. In the hot sun, after I speak with you, I'm going to go help another farm here in West Fairleigh to go and help them with raking and tedding. And I think to myself, who else is doing that running for Congress? So I want people to know that they're getting an authentic person. They're getting a person who doesn't live in a mansion, doesn't drive a fancy car, but is committed to them. And that's what makes me so dangerous, is that I'm committed to them and I'm not beholden to any corporations, not beholden to the military. I served in the military. I know what's going on behind the scenes. And so the big thing is that they're getting a person who fights for the working class, who fights for all of their needs. And I think that right now they are being bombarded by both sides with all the misinformation. Oh, vote for us because we'll do this. Vote for us because we'll do that. Nobody's helped them. They left them a long time ago on the on the wayside. So I think that for me, you're going to get somebody who's honest, somebody who's clear, somebody who enjoys being out there working hard, but also enjoys education, learning, continuing to develop, reading the news, keeping up with all of the different information coming in. And I think that ultimately we need to fight for the entire working class against not only the parties of capitalism and war, but against war itself and against capitalism and against the profit motive, and to move to a society of dignity for all people.
Christopher Helali, the Communist Party candidate for U.S. Representative for Vermont's at-large congressional district. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You can learn more from his campaign website, ChristopherHelali.com. The general election is Tuesday, November 3rd. Remember, you can vote early in person. You can vote absentee by mail, or vote absentee hand delivered on election day. Whichever way works for you, please vote. Thanks for watching Meet the Candidates 2020, sponsored in part by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. I'm Marty Cohn. Stay healthy.